What is up, everybody? I'm Callie Sudbrook from Beachside Custom Gyms, and this is our very first YouTube design review. So what I'd like to do is walk you through one of our latest designs for a builder out in Minnesota, Mark D. Williams Custom Homes. And this one in particular, this beautiful photo render that you're seeing here is the Mysa Hus. So the Mysa Hus is a branded spec home with a Scandinavian style, and the whole home is focused on this theme of wellness and fitness and health. So when it comes to the gym in particular, or the wellness studio, it's not just a room with equipment with a mirror and a Peloton. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a little bit more robust and there's a lot more to it. So let's walk you through. But first off, the detached wellness studio, which is right here on the side. But you've got these really wide 8-foot doors basically that open straight onto this entertaining patio with a pergola and a clear view of the pool. So this space instantly feels like an extension of the home, not just an afterthought. And then right outside, you can't really see it from this view, but let's go to this one here. Whoops, I'm giving you a preview of what it's gonna look like. Shoot. Over here, we've got space for the cold plunge. This is not the intended cold plunge. We're actually going with the Chilo cold plunge. It's going to be color matched to the home's exterior, and this is all just beautiful cedar, and it's just like a really clean detail so that it matches, it flows, and it sits in this little nook right here, so it looks like it's just always meant to be there. And ignore all of this stuff on the side, but we've actually got this sauna in the back corner of this wellness studio, and then this door actually exits and you can enter into the cold plunge, you can go back into the sauna, so that it's really set up and geared for that contrast therapy loop that feels effortless. And the door to the sauna and the gym is just steps away from the actual house itself, so that right there is really, really cool. So we were brought onto the project after construction had already started. So the foundation was poured, the walls were up, I think electrical was already starting, and so, you know, we had a solid footprint to work with, but we didn't have the ability to move walls or doors or change the structure in any way. So this is where our job becomes crucial and very, very important to making sure that a fitness space is executed well in a custom home. So the job became make the space feel premium, functional, and flexible without touching the bones of it. Because as a spec home, this has to work for fitness-minded buyers. We don't know what their lifestyle is, specifically what exact equipment they like using. So that layers on an even more a bigger challenge to this, not knowing exactly what that person wants. So I had to design this in such a way that it's going to meet the needs of the vast majority of people who are fitness-minded, who would enjoy a space like this. So I did just a smart balance of cardio and strength training and a layout that doesn't feel crammed. So yes, sure, I could have added way more stuff to this layout, but I didn't. And so first off, I want to walk you through what was originally proposed in the space, actually. So the designer, she's a phenomenal designer on this, Melissa, she just kind of put stuff as placeholders into this space so that it wasn't like she was speccing it out or saying it has to go there. She just thought there's enough room in this space to kind of do some movement. So we removed that all together, and this was kind of what it had, you know, been set up like, give or take. So we had a treadmill here, we had a spin bike, and it just doesn't really work when you start to kind of think about it. She didn't have a rack or anything like that. So this was really, based on the original layout, the only place a rack would have fit, and it doesn't work. So this red outline is where the bar actually racks onto the squat rack, and so you really don't have enough room on this side at the top to re-rack or unload a heavy barbell or, you know, a place to put the plates once you're done. So this wasn't a viable option, and so I called this viable option number one, or what did I call it? Non-viable option number one. So it just doesn't flow. The other thing is with the treadmill, we have a window here, so we placed it facing the window in this option that's not truly viable, because if you flip it around, then you have to come into the window space, the slider door over here, because the treadmill has to have 3 feet of space behind it. That's if you go flying, you don't want to be crammed behind the wall in the treadmill. Sure, you could put it right up against the wall and just take your chances, but most people are actually going to want that, you know, kind of stepped off the wall just a little bit, just for safety purposes. But then, like I said, it gets into this territory here of that window. I don't love it. Then another thing, a weird component, is you've got the spin bike facing this way and you've got the treadmill facing that way. And so you kind of have this awkward situation of cardio pieces that aren't really aligned. So don't love this. So what we did is we went to another option that really wasn't viable. So just to kind of move the pieces around in here. So we put the spin bike over here. Again, it's facing outwards now. Oops, I lost my little cursor here. It's facing outwards, which is great. But then in order to have space behind the treadmill right here, it had to face into a wall. Like, who wants to look at a wall when they're on the treadmill? Of course, it's probably going to have some sort of display or TV or something like that, but it's not ideal. Then over here, we really don't have enough room for this kettlebell and dumbbell storage because keep in mind, the barbell is here. You're going to want to re-rack equipment on the sides, on each side of the bar. Over here, we've got plenty of space to re-rack and unrack. Over here, there's just not enough space. It just feels tight. You're going to maybe knock into the dumbbell or kettlebell storage rack. It just gets a little tricky. So those were basically two options that were not viable. So then that leads us into an okay setup, but it's not great. I don't love it for a multitude of reasons. So the rack would be against the back wall here, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's sort of like an energy flow where like you're facing away from the openness of this huge window, right? It just feels like you're turning your back to something wide and open and spacious and pretty. So I don't love this. Again, we have the treadmill looking out the window at God knows what. And, you have obviously the space behind the treadmill now, but it just doesn't flow. And then you have this awkward sort of walkway here where, you've got space to load the barbells, you've got space to grab dumbbells and kettlebells and walk them back over here. It just seems a little cut up. Like you kind of have like this situation going, which I don't love in terms of flow, right? So, all right. Drum roll, please. Let's go to our most viable option for this space. Now we're talking. All right, so a couple things here. We switched from a treadmill to a rower in this particular case. This is the StillFit Rower Pro and the StillFit Bike Pro. Now, if I wanted to, I could put a treadmill here easy, and I would bring it actually all the way out to where this door opens, past the wall. And the reason for that is so that we have enough space back here if someone flies off the back. Again, you don't need that, but because we have this sort of gap between where the door is opening and where the wall is, that's why I put this red bar here. In theory, you could have something coming up to this space, right? To kind of that level. Same thing with the bike, and I just showed them staggered here for, if you're getting onto the rowing machine, the seat's probably going to be here, the handles are here. So just to kind of offset them slightly, give some space behind the bike so you can kind of come in here, walk on, get on the rowing machine and go to town. You've still got a ton of space here in the front. You could do walking lunges. You could throw a couple yoga mats here with some friends. You've got a ton of space. Over here, now the rack is kind of nestled into this wall, right? If I had my choice, I would have wanted the window to bookend the rack. But we didn't have that option, so what we did instead is we've got window, we've got mirror, and then mirrors on this back wall, so that it still looks a little bit symmetrical. So I would have loved for this window to kind of have a symmetry over here. But again, that was a minor detail, and it really doesn't affect the overall vibe or flow of the room. What we're going to have here is a mirror that goes the length of the rack so that you can see yourself working out. And then all along this back wall will be mirrors as well. So in terms of like from an exercise standpoint, you could take this rack, and this is just a mini split unit. It'll be high up on the wall. You can take this and you can just move it over here, right? And like store it. And then that opens up this huge whole space right here for movement, whatever you want it to be. You could do Olympic weightlifting, you could do deadlifts, you could do, again, walking lunges all throughout here. You could do plyometrics, you could do anything in this space. And so you've kind of got like this, situation going here where it's like you're going to do something on the rack, you're going to do some dumbbells, and then you're going to do something over here, maybe on a mat. And so it opens up more of a functional space, or use of this space rather. Now, one other thing that I don't particularly love about the space is that we have power on this wall for a TV. Now you can imagine it's kind of a weird situation because you're facing outwards towards the pool area because granted, it's a gorgeous view. You're going to want to look outside, right? Even if you have some sort of monitor here, let's say this is a treadmill or the bike with some sort of monitor here on it, you could watch that while having the outside view. It's going to be really hard to kind of crane the neck over and look at the TV. So my recommendation is that these cardio units have their own built-in sort of monitor or TV, whereas the TV over here is more for the weight area. So maybe you're watching the football game or you're watching a movie or something like that. So this TV is on a tilt mount or, something that kind of articulates, but it could go flat against the wall just the same, kind of be out of the way, and then just have some entertainment on, music, whatever, while you're working out. So that's the final review. Let me see if I missed anything here. Oh, so one other thing is we kind of planned ahead, not knowing, obviously we're going to put a rower and a bike in here, but we wanted to keep it open for down the line for someone, let's say they want to switch out the rower for the treadmill. We want to make sure that there's isolated and dedicated receptacles for that treadmill so we needed to make sure that the treadmill area, which would be, obviously over here, has receptacles that are isolated and dedicated to support the power needs for some sort of motorized treadmill. So we thought ahead about that. We put receptacles over here at the TV height. We ran power and conduit for the mini split unit. So there's a lot of things that went on just before we even got to the equipment that we had to keep in mind, so that then we can start to piece in what equipment is going to be most appropriate for this. So again, this is just one take on it. You could set this up 1,000 different ways with different equipment, different pieces, but this was just what I thought was best given, all the things. We went with Still Fit for the bike and the rower because it's a German engineered product and it kind of gives a nod to that modern, seamless Scandinavian vibe that the whole house is going for. And Eleiko is a Swedish-made weight equipment company. So it, again, goes really heavily into that Scandinavian vibe and supports that whole, just like the Swedish engineering of it, the Scandinavian style, things like that, which we really wanted to accentuate on this project. Finally, this is how you design a spec home gym correctly. So it looks great now, but it stays flexible for later. So that's a wrap. That's the Mysa Hus Wellness Studio, clean layout, intentional flow, and design for real life use. So if you want more walkthroughs like this, when I break down what works, what we had to solve, how to design a space that feels high-end and functional, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.